Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Dark Femininity series. So, one of you guys requested on my community page that I talk about cross cultural appeal. And I have touched on this a little bit throughout my channel, but I've never done an entire dedicated video to it. So, I'm going to go ahead and add this into the Dark Femininity series because one thing I've noticed is that in the Black community, they do tend to kind of police things like cultural appropriation, or sometimes they will accuse people of culturally appropriating even when they're not. And I've noticed that if you grew up in an African American environment or you're usually around like Black people, then sometimes if you try to branch out, people will look at you like you're crazy. Like, for example, I've been told that I talk white. I've been told that I act white because I like things like hiking and boating and canoeing and, stuff that apparently Black people don't do. In fact, I have even been told by a Black friend before, like, Black people don't go swimming, Black people don't go hiking. All of those closed minded ways of thinking, those things will inhibit your cross cultural appeal. And when I use the term cross cultural appeal, I'm talking about when it comes to friendships, I'm talking about when it comes to relationships. Let's say you want to date someone who is from a different ethnicity than your own. Even when it comes to work relationships, I have used cross cultural appeal in the workplace. By the way, you can have any phenotype and have cross cultural appeal. I will say that your phenotype can contribute to cross cultural appeal if you look kind of ambiguous. And when I use the term ambiguous, I'm not saying looking white because that's only one people group. But one of the ways that I like to enhance my cross cultural appeal is I do not code switch. So I know that that's a controversial talking point. A lot of people, they talk about code switching and stuff like that. I don't consider myself to be a code switcher. I speak in the same newscaster slash somewhat valley girl voice all the time. I've actually tried to train my voice to speak in a lower tone because my voice used to be really, really high pitched like this, and I would talk super fast. And sometimes I would hold out my vowels and it would sound so annoying. But no, I think that like the way you speak, I think that it just points to maybe where you're from or the cultural background that you have. Fun fact, I actually do not date men who speak in a lot of Ebonics or African American vernacular English. I don't care what ethnicity the guy is, because I've actually met like even white guys who speak in African American vernacular English. I personally don't date that because I do believe that people will they will kind of have preconceived notions about your background based on the way you speak, based on the type of slang that you use. And I know this because I have been told by others that even my slang is like supposedly white girl slang because I use words like awesome, cool, great, super. Like I'll use the word super, like, oh, he's super annoying, or that's super cute, or I'm super excited. I didn't realize that little phrases and little slang words point to the types of cultures you were raised around. I know that, like, for me in the past, whenever I used to be around the African American community or when I went to an HBCU, at first I used to think, oh, is something wrong with me because I don't talk the same way as other people? And, like, I was literally known around campus as the one who talks like a white girl. Like, that was one of the many nicknames that I was given. But when I was at an HBCU, I was utilizing dark femininity. So I used those quote unquote negative aspects of myself. Like people were calling me bougie, they were calling me Hillary, they were saying I talk like a white girl. Sometimes people used to say I dress like a real estate agent. So I was using those quote unquote negative things and I was embracing them. And yes, I would dress even more classy. So basically, what I would do is I like to wear blazers. Well, I used to like to wear blazers and stuff because I had a job. And so I would constantly be wearing blazers or pea coats or like, you know how Olivia Pope dresses from Scandal? That's how I used to dress in college. But cross cultural appeal is important for social climbing goals. And it also helps you to have more options in terms of like friendships and networking. I told you guys the story about how at my first job as an accountant, there were two monocultural African Americans that worked in my department. Both of them, they tried to kind of gang up on me and like exclude me. And so instead of me getting mad, I just hung out with the other people in my department who all happened to be non-black people. A couple of them were Latin American, so I was just hanging out with them. And then after they saw that they couldn't make me feel isolated, by separating themselves from me, then suddenly they wanted to complain and say that they were being treated like pawns or treated like peons and nobody in the office was talking to them. Well, their monoculturalism held them back. But a part of the cross cultural appeal I use is speaking different languages. So, speaking one different language, a little bit of Spanish. But that is something that I've actually used when I'm interacting with people from a Latin American background. Like I might try to say a couple of things or I might talk to them about my background. And by the way, this is why it's important to learn the languages of your ancestry. Like even if you just have a little bit of admixture, that doesn't matter because people will appreciate the fact that you are showing love to their culture. So I've never heard of anybody saying, how many percent of this race are you? Oh no, you don't really count. No, usually people are flattered and they feel complimented that you are acknowledging their heritage and that you're proud of that part of your heritage. And so, like, if I'm around Latin American people, yes, I will speak in my broken ass Spanish. I'll be like, hablo español. Mi español no es perfecto, pero hablo español. So, what I just said was, I speak Spanish. My Spanish, it's not perfect, but I do speak Spanish. So, if you have a Latin American background, something very simple you can do is learn how to order food in Spanish, like from a Mexican restaurant or from like a food truck or something. That's very like basic and that can help you to enhance your cross-cultural appeal. I remember there was this other time where I went to this black fitness group. So it was mainly created for black people, but like everybody was there. And so I remember, you know how girls sometimes they don't want to talk to you or whatever. So I was new there. And instead of me just like waiting around for girls to walk up to me, I just started walking up to people and talking to them. So one of the ladies was a Latin American lady, and I just started talking to her. And when it comes to cross cultural appeal, you have to be courageous and bold. Like you can't be afraid to talk to people from those other cultures. But if you are just getting into it, you can start off by talking to people who are from your backgrounds. Like if you have a mixed race background, you have multiple ethnicities in your family, you can just start off by talking to people from those ethnicities. Something that is considered attractive universally is confidence. And so that is something that's going to be very important when it comes to your social climbing goals. Also, when it comes to dating and stuff like that, so I am very multicultural. I wasn't always as multicultural as I am today, but because of the way that I grew up, it's so funny because people used to make fun of me for growing up around white people or talking white or having white people in my family. People would make fun of me. But now I see a lot of people in the black community, they love dating white men or, they want to divest and they want to like go hang out with these men and they want to move to these neighborhoods, these predominantly white neighborhoods. I see the same thing from unambiguous black men. So it actually shows me that I have a cultural advantage in that area because I don't have to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars taking courses or like learning all of these things about other cultures because I was already immersed in them and I know how to immerse myself in those things for free. So, for example, when it comes to white culture, I didn't realize this was a part of white American culture until I moved out of my hometown. But you guys know I'm very into coffee. I'm obsessed with coffee. I love coffee shops. I'm also very into like smoothies and smoothie bowls and stuff. I never associated it with whiteness until unambiguous people started telling me that's a white people thing. Like coffee, that's white people drink that, or like nobody drinks coffee. Black people can't afford that. Like I've been told so many ignorant things by unambiguous people who have put themselves in a monocultural box. But I will say, with the whole coffee thing, not only did I used to work at a coffee shop, but I just love coffee in general and all of the different kinds of coffee. So I'm just pretty knowledgeable about it. And I remember there was one time when I was at actually another hiking group. This time it was like I guess you could say a white one, or like it wasn't geared towards any race. And so there were mostly white people there. Oh my gosh, this is a story time, by the way. Okay, so I was at this running thing or like hiking thing, and there were mostly white people there. So I remember there was one unambiguous girl that showed up. And she was like, the unambiguous girls that are raised around white culture. So that's fine. I never thought anything of it. So I remember she walked up to the group and I was like, hi, like just trying to be friendly. And she literally looked me dead in the eye and kept walking. And I was like, okay. And then she just stood in the circle like with everybody. And I noticed that she was really trying very, very hard to get the white guy's attention. She was one of those girls that was more like, I don't want to say loud. I guess I'll just say she was very, very extroverted. And I would not call her ghetto. Her style was more like Fifi Dobson or like Rihanna. So she was more like had all the tattoos, had the nose piercings, the eyebrow piercings, ear piercings going all the way up her ear. She had like blue hair and stuff. So she was more like that. And so I thought we would be cool because, I was saying hi to her, but then she just ignored me. I didn't think anything of it. So she ignored me so she could try to get attention of these white guys because the guys at the workout group, I guess you could consider them to be attractive or whatever. They were like the tall, in shape white guys or whatever. And so I was just kind of like letting her talk because my personality type, I do not think that it is cross-culturally appealing if you try to dominate and domineer every single conversation. I've always noticed that the people who do stuff like that, they tend to be people with inferiority complexes who are like more desperate for attention. I'm not going to accuse that girl of doing that. But anyway, so I was just minding my business, doing my little stretches before we went and did the workout. And then the one white guy, he started the quote unquote hot one. So he actually started asking me, he was like, oh, so it's your first time here? And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, okay, like, where are you from or whatever? And I was like, oh, I just moved here. And he was like, oh, what part of town do you live in? And I was like, oh, I live in this part of town. And then he started talking about coffee shops. He was like, oh, my favorite coffee shop is in your neighborhood. And I was like, oh my gosh, is it so-and-so coffee shop? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I love their lavender lattes. And he was like, lavender lattes are my favorite. So my cross-cultural appeal actually was being used to attract attention to myself. I didn't purposely do it. Like, that wasn't my intention. I didn't go there thinking, let me talk about coffee. No, I just naturally am multicultural, so I'm more knowledgeable about things like that. And I even worked at Starbucks, for God's sakes, when I was a teenager. But anyway, he got super excited when we were like talking about coffee and stuff. And I could tell that the unambiguous girl was like getting jealous or whatever because he was the hot one in the group. Or at least, if you're looking at dating standards and stuff, he was the only tall, like buff guy or whatever. But I wasn't even interested in him like that. So he ended up trying to like continue talking to me and like being flirty. But I didn't. I basically ignored it because I was talking to my ex at the time. And then I noticed, okay, so we separated into groups, like we were doing this run. So we were running up this little small mountain hill thing, and we separated into groups, like based on how fast you could go. So I was obviously in the slow group because it was my first time there, and the unambiguous girl was leading my group. And so this girl, she literally ran off and left me, and I literally got lost in the woods. And I was like 2 miles off the course and I had to try to like find my way back. But I remember thinking, was she like purposely trying to run super fast, knowing that I couldn't keep up or something? Like, because why would you do that? If you're the leader of a fitness group and you are required to like, I don't know, help the new people, why would you not help somebody that was a beginner? So anyway, I do think that she potentially could have been jealous of the attention or whatever, or maybe she really wanted the attention of this particular white guy and she didn't get it. So that is one thing I was thinking of. So I was thinking like, okay, she probably doesn't want me to come back because usually if you're going to some sort of hiking group or walking group or running group, whatever, if the people leave you out, usually that's going to make you not want to come back. So I remember thinking she probably doesn't want me to come back or something, but I won't assume. But that was an example of cross-cultural appeal. It increased my social power in that setting to the point where someone else was extremely triggered. And thankfully, the white guy that was there, he like found me and he made sure I was okay or whatever. And then he even called out the girl. He was like, oh, like you left her, like you were running super fast. You were supposed to be helping like the slower group. And she was like, oh my God, like, no, I thought that you were right behind me the whole time. That was a damn lie. I was over a mile behind her. But anyway, I've noticed that a lot of women get extremely jealous of cross-cultural appeal, especially if those women are trying to date cross-culturally or they just want to be seen as being multicultural. Something else that I like to do to enhance my cross-cultural appeal is I like to wear blonde. I like to wear blonde highlights. By the way, right now I'm just talking about cross-cultural appeal in terms of if you want to go to like some sort of white community or whatever. I'm not pedestalizing whiteness. That's a part of my background, so I don't care what anyone thinks of it. But I do like to wear sometimes honey highlights, little blonde highlights. So that night I was wearing my hair down and straight, and it was like brown going into blonde hair. And it looks natural on me because it matches my phenotype and my features and stuff. I have like a few freckles on my face, and like, I have other features where it looks like it could blend with my phenotype. But anyway, cross cultural appeal, it was actually how I met my most recent boyfriend too, because when we were all talking in a group, this was at yet another fitness group. So if you guys watch my Decentered Dating series, you guys will hear me talk more about having residual attention, residual validation, having multiple streams of validation, having lots of micro validation. So the way that I use cross-cultural appeal is to increase my micro validations. So believe it or not, the way that I speak actually increases micro validation because I've noticed that I don't deal with as many negative stereotypes as women who talk like this. And by the way, I'm not telling people that they have to change the way that they speak or that they have to assimilate into a culture that's not their own. But like I said, I have a multiracial and multicultural background, so I'm not offended by it. I don't view it as like me betraying myself or anything because it's a part of myself. But I've noticed that a lot of monocultural women, regardless of their actual race, a lot of monocultural women get jealous of multicultural women. One of the biggest examples I can think of this was actually with fellow MLS women on Real Housewives of Potomac. You know how they were like jealous of Katie's multiculturalism? I don't really watch that show because it's a little bit too ratchet for me. It makes MLS women look bad, but I have noticed that even some MLS women who are monocultural or non-black women who only engage in one culture, they do tend to get jealous of what I call a fluid identity. So a part of the fluid identity is having cross-cultural appeal. So this could be for dating purposes. It could be just for friendships, like maybe you want to make friends with girls from different backgrounds than you. But I've noticed a lot of people are scared of cross-cultural appeal because they're scared of white people, they're scared of Latin American people. I have noticed a pattern where in the monoracial black community, they seem to have sometimes this mindset that like everybody's racist. So it's like, okay, if you already automatically assume that I'm racist and colorist just by being light skinned or having a multi-generationally mixed type of background, I can only imagine what you think of non-black people. So white people, Asian people. And it's like, just remember that the people who are accusing you of isms, for the most part, those do tend to be more monocultural people. This is also why I laugh at the divestment movement because it's like, okay, if you are making fun of non-black women and saying they age like spoiled milk or whatever, but then you're also a divester, you do realize that you're going to have a white sister-in-law, a white mother-in-law, white brothers-in-law, white nieces and nephews and cousins. He's going to most likely have white or non-black exes. So I believe that it's very difficult to not only date in different ethnicities, but also even make friends in other ethnicities if you are extremely monocultural, because no culture is perfect. So that includes African American culture. I've noticed that a lot of people they call out every other background. They'll call out white people, Asian people, Hispanic people. They'll call out every other group of people, Middle Eastern people. But then suddenly with African Americans, you're not allowed to call out any of the flaws within African American culture. No, I'm not scared of that. I will call out all of the flaws that I see. And one of the flaws of monoculturalism is you have a tendency to assume that everybody's automatically racist. Or if they're white, they're automatically racist. But somehow, if it's a white male, then he's suddenly not racist. But I kind of feel like sometimes when people look for white validation, it's more so like to prove to others that they are somehow high status or valuable or something like that. I've even heard some of these women say on their YouTube channels that they're mad that unambiguous black men are colorist, and so they're going to be colorist back. And so for some of these women, the whole divesting thing is about simply getting revenge on black men or hopefully being seen in public with a white guy as if that is going to somehow make her feel better. But anyway, one of the other ways that I like to have cross-cultural appeal is with the music that I listen to. You guys know that I feel like a lot of the R&B and stuff, even though I love the singing styles, some of the R&B and hip hop can be very toxic to me. like as far as the actual lyrics and stuff, singing about being a side chick or like your guy's cheating on you and then he's also a dusty and then you're his lover and his secretary working every day of the week, singing all that stuff or like listening to that music on a constant basis. It does get kind of boring, but also sometimes the lyrics aren't as positive. So I do try to diversify the types of music that I listen to. And that also helps with my overall cross cultural appeal. And then one of the main ways that I like to increase my appeal when it comes to working across cultures or like interacting with people is via my fashion, my beauty, my hairstyles and stuff, especially because of my phenotype. I really do feel like I have a more fluid phenotype. Think of women like Beyonce, for example, where depending on the color of blonde she wears, it can make her look super pale or it can make her look darker. Notice how if she wears like black hair, it gives her it just gives her a different vibe or a different look. So I love to play around with my actual phenotype as well. Some of you guys are into like contacts and stuff like that. I like the cosplay contacts, so like the unrealistic colors. So sometimes I will wear like purple. I'll have like purple eyes or something. And when you wear the different colors, it doesn't necessarily make your eyes like super purple. It just gives it a little bit of a purple overtone. But yes, it will be obvious that those are contacts. But I like kind of the Asian style of beauty or like the accessories and stuff. So that's another way that I have increased my cross-cultural appeal. I have dated Asian men in the past or men who are like Asian and white or something like that. That's a part of my dating history. And also, I just have made friends of all different backgrounds. And so I learned about all of those things. And I've noticed that depending on how I dress and like the style of makeup I do, the hairstyles I do and stuff, depending on all of those things, people tend to mistake me for something different. So like I noticed that when I was more into Asian beauty, so like doing all the different Asian beauty hacks, doing the hairstyles that I had learned from the Asian community, people would actually ask me if I was Blasian. And I don't have any Asian in me whatsoever. So I thought that was really interesting. And then I noticed that whenever I had blonde in my hair, like very light blonde, then people would automatically be like, oh, you're black and white. And so I know that people are like, oh, you shouldn't stereotype people based on their hair colors. Okay, well, we don't live in a utopian society. So people are going to stereotype based on your hairstyle. If you have a 4C afro, people associate that with African people or with black people because generally speaking, that's true. So there's nothing wrong with looking like what you are. There's also nothing wrong with embracing other cultures and showing love to those cultures. I don't view it as cultural appropriation if I wear like some contacts, like some cosplay contacts that I usually get at like an Asian store. I don't view that as cultural appropriation. I'm not scared of people accusing me of that, but I've noticed that sometimes in the black community in particular, they tend to have a tendency to just call everything appropriation to the point where if you are mixed race, let's say you're black and some other stuff, then it's like, oh, well, you can't wear that. Oh, you're only 10% this, you're only 15% that. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry, who died and made you the god over what fashion I can wear based on my DNA? That's racist. If you're saying that people can't wear certain fashions based on their DNA, it's not like you're wearing something and pretending to be that person. Like, even when it comes to the Kardashians and stuff like that, they never said, I am black. No, they just happen to date black men, obviously, so they seem to want to increase their cross-cultural appeal to black men. I think they might have switched it up now. I think they might be dating like other races of men, so I think they got their BBLs removed and stuff. But other people are going to do it. So if you're scared to have cross-cultural appeal because you're afraid that people are going to think you're appropriating, then that's fine. You can stay in your box. That's fine. Only wear stuff from your culture. Only use the slang from your culture. Only watch TV and listen to music from your culture. I better not see you eating any Italian food or, don't eat pizzas and spaghetti because nope, that's cultural appropriation. So that's what I'm saying. It's like people are trying so hard to police you because they don't want you to be able to social climb. The bottom line is the Kardashians, Ariana Grande, and other people have social climbed using cross-cultural appeal to blackness. And who go and check them? It's like If other people, how is it that every other group in the world, every other woman in the world, she can wear whatever she wants? We've got people in the Asian community doing braids, doing locks, and doing things to make their hair into afros. So everybody else can do whatever they want with no boundaries and not give an F. But suddenly, if you have any blackness in you, you're not allowed to wear blonde highlights because you're anti-black. You're not allowed to wear colored contacts because you're trying to be white. It's like, no, I get to utilize whatever aspects of my beauty I want so that I can social climb if I want to, or so I can experiment with my beauty or see how society reacts to me. I can do that as much as I want. Everybody else in this world is already doing it. Some people are even making millions of dollars off of doing it. So why can't I? This is called dark femininity, baby. I don't care about being Mother Teresa. I don't care about being the most holy and self-righteous person in the world. No, I'm going to enjoy my time on this earth because you know what? I didn't ask to be here. I just showed up. My parents decided to have me. And so I'm just learning how to navigate in the unfair society that I live in. As long as I'm not actively talking crap about people from those groups, then I can do what I want. The only time that I will call out hypocrisy is if somebody wants to look like a mixed black woman and then she makes fun of mixed black women. Or she wants to look like a light-skinned black woman, then she makes fun of light-skinned black women. That's the only time that I will directly call it out. But other than that, if people are just minding their business, like I've seen white guys wearing hats that have the African print. I think it's like that cloth, that African cloth print. I've seen white guys wearing hats like that walking down the street. I don't stop them in the middle of the street and say, "Excuse me, Scott, you can't wear that hat because that print is associated with African people." No, maybe he likes that culture and thinks that that print is beautiful and that's why he's wearing it. Maybe he has a black girlfriend who bought him that hat. You have no idea why people are doing the things that they do. And so I like to use cross-cultural appeal as a part of my social climbing strategy. And I will even flex it sometimes, kind of like how I did at that job when the African Americans tried to exclude me from the little friend group. And I was like, okay, you think I'm just going to sit here by myself and like not talk to anyone and be sad? No, I know how to socialize with people from other groups. So nice try. But another thing that I love to do is learning about other cultures. And what better way to learn than to actually interact with people from that culture? So for those of you who are a part of the Patreon and Discord, you guys know that I went to like the Chinese New Year celebration. I am not Asian. I have been to multiple like Asian festivals and stuff. I have gone to like different museums where it talks about the history of other cultures that are not my own. And that's just so I can become more knowledgeable. And one of the best things that I learned from other cultures was like some of my hair care tips and beauty tips. I'm actually going to go to the Indian market today and I'm going to get some more hair stuff. But some of the best hair care that I've ever learned has actually been from non-black cultures. Shout out to the girls who like Olaplex. I actually learned that just from random girls on YouTube who happen to be white. That's something that I don't really hear a lot of people in the natural hair community talking about, but I love Olaplex, like Olaplex oil, the conditioner and stuff, or like the little treatment that you put on your hair. So there are a lot of valuable things to be learned from other cultures. So I don't like to devalue people based on their ethnic backgrounds or try to pretend like one race or phenotype is superior to another. I don't really believe in like racial and ethnic superiority. I'm not one of those types of people. In fact, my channel probably wouldn't even be here if I was. But I've noticed another narrative going around that when it comes to interracial or intercultural dating, that white guys or other races of men that they only prefer unambiguous dark-skinned black women. If that were the case, we wouldn't even be having a colorism, texturism, featureism conversation because Hollywood is run by white men. And who is the main group that does not get representation in Hollywood, or they do not get representation as far as being a beauty standard? So I don't even have to get into the fact that MLS women are still desirable to other groups of men because this, first of all, this is not a competition for like white male validation or for non-black validation. And I feel like even if it was, people who are actually mixed with those races, they have a closer proximity to that people group because their own father is a white guy or their grandfather is from India or something like that. So they obviously would have a closer cultural and phenotypical proximity to the people of those ethnicities. And if you think that white men are somehow not colorist, not texturist, and not featurist, when white men as a whole have had a history of domineering and conquering people of color and literally creating entire sciences that are based on racism. If you think that they are somehow going to automatically be the least racist group, that is false. That's completely false. If you think that I've heard colorist comments from black men, there are some things that I've heard white guys say to me that I can't even repeat. I'm not even going to repeat them on YouTube. Things that I've heard like white or non-black men say about unambiguous monoracial dark-skinned black women. And so I don't really feel the need to go in depth about divesting or like dating interculturally, because I do kind of feel like for us over here, if you are mixed or if you happen to look mixed, I do believe that you can have it easier because most likely those people, they've seen others who look like you. Or like one thing that I've actually noticed, even if the person is white, and let's say it's a white girl who looks like she is Latin American or something, I have actually heard monoracial people who look mixed, they will bring that up in conversation. And they'll be like, yeah, I'm white. I know that I look like I have other ethnicities. I'm actually thinking of Ashley Graham. She's like a plus size model. She is non-black, but apparently a lot of people thought that she was part black, myself included. And she was like, yeah, no, I know that I look that way. So that's something else that you can do to increase your cross-cultural appeal. If you're a follower of this channel and let's say you are not mixed, but you look like you are a part of a certain people group, you can actually bring that up and be like, yeah, a lot of people think that I am, but I'm actually not. That it's funny because that's actually what I did when it came to the Ethiopian community. So me and my brother, we got mistaken for Habesha Ethiopian so many times to the point where I started learning about it. I was like, well, let me learn about this people group. And that's where I learned about like the hair tips and tricks. That's where I learned about ghee and like all these other really cool things. And so now I actually was able to make a friend. I met her at one of these other fitness groups. She was Habesha Ethiopian. And I remember she asked me, she was like, oh, are you Ethiopian? And I was like, oh, no, I'm not. But a lot of people have thought that I was. Like, they think that I'm Habesha. And then I was like, are you Habesha? And she was like, yeah, I am. And she was very impressed by the knowledge that I had about her ethnic group. So that's another way you can increase your cross-cultural appeal is if you look like people from a certain group, you can learn about that people group and you can be like, oh yeah, I'm not a part of that group, but a lot of people think I am, to the point where I started learning about it. And people are going to be complimented at the fact that you respect their culture enough to want to learn more about it and to want to try to show love and respect to those people. I've never in my life heard of someone getting offended because others wanted to learn about their culture. In fact, people enjoy teaching you about their culture. So, for example, I love to try to speak Spanish around people that are native Spanish speakers because when I mess up, they will teach me and they will correct me and they'll say, oh, this is how you say it. And then I get to learn more because I have people from those actual parts of the world who are helping me to learn more about that. Another thing that I have noticed is that, did you know that different cultures of men actually have different flirting styles? So I talk a little bit about this in the Decentered Dating series over on my membership page. But that's something that you can think about when it comes to your love life if you choose to date. I believe that if you are choosing to date, make sure you're doing it from a decentered perspective. But I've noticed that a lot of guys, they have different styles of flirting. So I've noticed that African American guys, they tend to be they're more flirty at the very, very beginning. So they'll be like, hey, baby, what's up? Or if they're not like that, they'll just say, hey, you look very beautiful or whatever, and they may ask you on a date. But I've noticed a lot of African American guys, sometimes they don't quite know how to take it from first date to second date to third date to fourth date to fifth date, and then remain consistent about the whole thing and then keep women's interest the entire time. So that's actually a cultural thing that I have noticed. Obviously, take everything I say on this YouTube channel with a grain of salt. Not all should already go without being said. If you come on my channel and use terms like not all, you'll immediately get banned. Nothing that anyone says on the internet is genuinely talking about all people. So anyway, but I have noticed that though with like black guys, it's more, they may be flirty in the beginning, but then once you pass the first date or the second date or something, sometimes they kind of maybe expect you to keep up with like the talking and stuff. But I've also noticed this not just with African American guys, but maybe with lower socioeconomic status guys who can't afford to take you on 5 or 6 dates before asking you to be their girlfriend. So they're hoping that by taking you on the first date, that hopefully you guys will start talking and then you guys can hang out for free for the rest of the 6 months or whatever, and then you'll become his girlfriend. But that's one thing that you can start to examine as well. Like, how do different cultures of guys flirt with me? So, like, in my experience, the thing that I like, though, about the black guys' flirting style is I like dancing. So, I've noticed that, like, generally speaking, a lot of the black guys or mixed race black guys that I have been around can dance. And so, I'm one of those people where, like, if a song comes on, I'm going to start dancing. So, I like that part. I've noticed that that part of flirting, dancing is like a way of flirting for me. And so examining the style of flirting that you like, that actually can help you to pinpoint what culture you're more likely to vibe well with. So you guys know my type is actually MLS men. Well, I think that that's my type. I'm actually not sure. I will be exploring that once I start dating again. I'm waiting until I get my boob job though, before I start dating. It's coming up pretty soon. So anyway, that is one flirting style I like, is dancing. I know that a lot of Latin American men can dance as well. So the last time I went out with my friends and we were actually salsa dancing, there was one guy who was like, he was Latin American. He did not go on the dance floor and like immediately start salsa dancing and stuff. So I've noticed that another part of it is if the guy is an extrovert or an introvert, sometimes introverted guys, they may not necessarily go in the middle of the dance floor when no one else is dancing and start salsa dancing. So that would make sense as well. So I don't think all of it is constantly based on culture. But I have noticed that generally speaking, a lot of African American guys have tended to be more influenced by like hip hop culture and hip hop music. So you already know what that dating style is going to be like, if any at all. So this is a part of why my preference seems to be a multicultural, multiracial guy who has a similar mix to me. But one thing I've noticed when it comes to when white guys try to flirt with me and stuff, usually the way that a white guy will try to get his way in is he will actually start off by just talking to me. He'll just talk to me like a normal human being. Usually he will bring up something that is my interest. So like the coffee thing with the guy like continuously wanting to talk about coffee, or like him ignoring. Okay, so with that story I just told with the unambiguous woman who ran off and like she was trying to get the white guy's attention, then the guy talked to me. So I actually viewed that guy talking to me as a form of flirting because there were tons of other girls there. In fact, I noticed that the other girls were trying to talk to that particular white guy. The unambiguous girl was not the only one that had tried to talk to him and get his attention. She was just the loudest. Before the unambiguous girl arrived, there was actually a Latin American girl. I'm pretty sure she was like Latin American and white. She had tried to talk to him and she was like, hey, like, how are you? What have you been up to? Blah, blah, blah. And she was like really trying to be flirty. I can tell kind of by body language and how she was stretching. She was kind of like poking her booty out so that he could like kind of look at it. That's just me kind of assuming. I guess I can't prove that, but yes, I kind of view that as being flirty. If you're looking at a guy, smiling at him, and you're also poking out your booty while you're talking to him and like kind of twirling your hair, yes, I view that as she was trying to flirt with him or whatever. By the way, this girl had a fiance, but I digress. So the reason that I viewed that guy as being flirty with me in that scenario was because that guy, other girls he could have like talked to any of the other girls there. I had never even talked to that guy. I didn't know him. So I was just minding my business with my little cute outfit on. And then he came up and started talking to me. And also he started talking about like his career and like, you know how guys try to do this thing where they try to say, they don't say how much money they make, but they specifically will try to tell you like, I'm a doctor, or, you know, they try to like randomly bring up certain things to almost impress you. So I viewed that as flirting, and I viewed that as a different style of flirting than like the African American guys style. I've also noticed with a lot of black guys, in my experience, a lot of them use negging as a part of their flirting style. Like, hey, what's up, big head? Hey, what's up? You got a light skinned forehead. You know, like I've noticed that oftentimes black guys, they will like kind of joke on you or like make jokes and make fun of you, or they'll be like, what are those? You know, they make fun of you as a form of flirting. That's not my preferred flirting style. I don't want to be made fun of and like nagged or whatever. I want to feel like a princess. I want to feel like I am, you know, like I am desired. I don't want the guy to be humbling me. And I know that not every person from all of these cultures will fit into these boxes that I'm putting them in for this video, but I have noticed in my experience, generally speaking, there are different forms of flirting. I've noticed that a lot of like black guys, they have used kind of like their sexiness or whatever, or kind of like that part of themselves, whereas white guys in my experience have tended to use more charm, kind of like wanting to charm you and stuff, like make you laugh or whatever. So I've noticed I like a mix of both of those. um, but another thing is you might be able to look back at your dating experiences and say, hey, how did like the Asian guys flirt with me? How did they try to talk to me? Or like, how did they interact with me in general? Did I like my experience, or did I feel like that style wasn't for me? Another thing that people don't think about when it comes to having friendships or relationships across cultures is that you are going to be teaching that person about your culture because they're going to ask questions about it. They're going to ask questions about your hair just naturally because they might not know that you have like a sew in or something or some clip ins. So that's something that just comes with the territory of having cross cultural appeal. So I don't mind answering questions about my hair or my background, or if I'm wearing contacts or something, or if I'm like, I don't know, if I'm dressing a certain way. I don't have a problem answering questions like that. But I've noticed that sometimes monocultural women, they get offended if you ask questions about their hair, or if you want to touch their hair or whatever. I've let people touch my hair before, but I will say though it was natural usually. But sometimes like even when I was wearing like half wigs and stuff, I still didn't really care. And I was very open about it because I'm not ashamed of my blackness. I'm not ashamed of my hair. I'm not ashamed of extensions. I'm not ashamed of beauty enhancements. So there's no shame there. So I don't feel the need to be like, I don't know, I don't have to like lie or something. Because sometimes I feel like when people say, oh no, I don't want these people to touch my hair, or I don't want these people to know that I'm wearing makeup. Like I've heard some women say they don't even want their husbands and stuff to know that they wear makeup. So like they will wake up earlier before he wakes up and they'll put on makeup, or they will make sure to like wait until he's sleeping and then they will wash off their makeup. And I'm not bashing that, but I just feel like that may not be sustainable long term. Like eventually that person is probably going to realize that you were wearing some makeup or that you have some clip-ins or whatever. So I never saw that as a big deal. And I've noticed that that has actually enhanced my cross-cultural appeal because I'm very authentic with who I am. I'm actually thinking about this one story time that I have where I went to yet another fitness group with my friend who's unambiguous. And I met this unambiguous friend at this black Pilates group. It was like this black women's Pilates group. And we went to this other fitness event, and the people, they were all like white or, non-black. And they introduced themselves. They were like, oh, how'd you guys hear about us? Like, how did you guys meet and become friends? And I told them about the Pilates group that we met in. And then one of the people was like, oh, I haven't heard of that one. Like, where is that one located? I don't know why I haven't heard of that. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's a black group. Like, it's geared towards African American people. So that could be part of why you haven't heard of it or something. So, yeah. And I didn't have a problem talking about it being a black group. And then later on, I talked to my unambiguous friend, and I was like, oh, now we're promoting our group. Like, that's fun. And she was like, oh, yeah, I was kind of like, I didn't want to say that it was like a black group because I felt like it was kind of cringy. And it's like, well, why would it be cringe? I didn't say this, but I was thinking, why are you cringing when talking about blackness? Like, why would you be ashamed of that? That's a beautiful thing. Blackness is beautiful. Being in a black group or organization, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. So I don't see why there's like this shame around it. I've noticed that some people who are more monocultural, it's almost as if they're ashamed of their culture or like the customs of their culture. Because let's be honest, weaves, wigs, half wigs, fake hair, that is a part of African American culture. And so I have no problem admitting that or talking about that or engaging in that myself. So I don't really get embarrassed about talking about those things around like non-black people, because that's another part of dealing with me. If you're dealing with me, if you're going to be my friend or if you're going to be in my life or whatever, you're going to see me change my hair literally every week. And so, yes, I'm going to have to tell you, oh, just so you know, I wear different wigs and extensions and stuff. So I might have brown hair this week, but like next week I'm going back blonde. And sometimes I've told you guys, I have even showed people the packages, like the wigs and stuff that I have, or sometimes I've had stuff delivered to work and then I'll be like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to wear next week. And that's because I'm not ashamed of my culture. Because remember, African American culture, that's my culture as well. So I don't care what anybody else thinks about it. I have a fluid identity. I can freely jump in and out of any cultures I want to, especially if that culture is a part of my actual DNA. So African American culture, that's my shit. Mixed race people have been leading the African American culture forward for hundreds of years. If you don't believe me, look in your history books. We've got plenty of people who look just like me who have been pioneers in the African American community. So I absolutely identify with it. I have no problem identifying with it. And I found it interesting that I was more willing and more excited to talk about this Black group than my actual unambiguous friend. But anyway, what do you ladies think? How have you utilized cross-cultural appeal in the workplace? Oh, I forgot to mention this, by the way. I've used it in job interviews as well. I've received multiple jobs by literally talking about my ethnic background in the interview. So in the past, I used to work for nonprofits. Sometimes they would help like Latin American people or African American people. And so I've literally said in interviews before, oh, well, that's a part of my background. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for that. So I've literally used it to get jobs. So far, I've received, I think, three. Yeah, so far I've received 3 different jobs by talking about my ethnic background in interviews. I'm not saying that like I wouldn't have got the job if I had not talked about that, but I do believe that those things helped me to get the job because all 3 times the hiring managers happened to be Latin American, sometimes African American, and one guy was a white Irish American guy. So that's another way that I've used cross-cultural appeal in a professional setting. But anyway, what do you ladies think? How have you utilized your cross-cultural appeal? How do you enhance your appeal? How do you enhance your fluid identity? How have you embraced your fluid identity? Do you like to go to festivals and stuff? I went to the Irish festival not that long ago during St. Patrick's Day because that's one of my admixtures. So I had no problem going there. And I had my cute little green shirt on and I had a good time. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.